I got you a gift. You won't like it, but
Great.
it's olive oil.
And you make olive oil?
No, I just make designs for cans of olive oil. And some crazy woman that I met.
This is German olive oil?
It's made by a German woman.
In Italy?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I like this.
Way through delicious oil.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't think it's quite going to be up to scratch for the restaurant.
Oh, come on.
It'll do for frying an egg. So, I've got to bring greetings. Okay. I was in New York just last week, and my friend, who is a guy who you also know, who is a guy called Ian, who was the marketing guy at Apple.
Yeah.
And you did a talk at Apple, and I did a talk at Apple.
Yeah.
And
what's he doing now?
He is working, he lives in New York, and he's working for the New York Times. And I had to have
civilized.
I got a picture. Here we are. Sorry, I don't know how these things work. Here we are. That's Ian.
Yeah, I do remember.
I took a picture of him so that you would remember him.
I remember him.
So now you have to replicate, give him the thumbs up. There we are.
You're so positive, I remember.
Once again, sorry, got a new phone. There we are. Perfect.
It's annoying when you go to California and all of these people that work 70, 80 hours a week, they're just so positive and, how are you? Like, there's nothing, no problems in the world. He was like that to me.
Yeah. I think my food education has been had in Denmark, has been had here in Copenhagen. Nicolai took artists from the gallery to Noma years ago. And I was always like, wow, this is really interesting. But I think it took me a while to understand the nature of being fed. There was like being fed and coming to Noma in a way. And I realized that I had to, it was a bad idea to come when you're really hungry because you just eat these things really quickly.
Well, I mean, yeah, food, of course, is everything.
But it's all about what I learned about Noma. Was the food is about the context.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the context is really important of dining, and the, discussion you have, and the way that you have to kind of share the food with other people. That's what I love about coming to Noma, is that it's like going to the theatre almost. Mm-hmm. I feel like, that way when you go to the cinema, mm-hmm. you kind of need, or the theatre, you kind of need to discuss it with somebody, otherwise it doesn't really exist. Mm-hmm. And I feel like coming to Noma in a way is a bit like that. I need to discuss it with people, I need to share it with people, otherwise somehow, it's that discussion that's really important. Mm-hmm. And there's so much about ideas, I suppose, as well. Ideas are a context as well, where you're trying to unravel what it is you're experiencing in your head while you're eating it, while you're experiencing it.
You guys eat out in a very different way to most people. And I think, ultimately, I don't know, but I feel that's also a giant difference between your world and the world of food. I mean, is there any more conservative, is there a more conservative world than food? People, they grow up eating the same 7, 8, 9 things all their life. And suddenly they are an adult. They might do something really well so they can afford to go out more. But they have only had 7, 8 things. In Denmark, it's råbrød and leverpostej and licorice. Those are 3 of the things that people grew up on.
Steph's hot dogs.
Yes, stuff like that. And then so when you serve things for people, we often do things where we say we can't do this yet. We put it in the drawer and say, okay, let's wait 5 years. Really?
Really?
Yeah. Of course. I mean, can you remember when we put ants on the menu? Everybody was like, they were freaking out, as if it was the wildest thing ever, and you need just to travel to Asia, to South America, and you see hundreds of millions of people eating this.
Mm-hmm.
And so to us, it was never this wild thing, but it made us not being able to put these things on the menu. And so we have many things like that we just don't put on the menu because people are so conservative when it comes to food, even when they come to Noma, even knowing. So when you say, I like to come here because it's also about the ideas, the quality of the ideas, and discussing afterwards what I experienced. To a lot of people, it's just, did I like it or not? And if I didn't like it, it was shit.
Mm-hmm. I would never come. Well, I've been here with my wife, but with like numerous other people as well. Mm-hmm. But if it was just me and her, it would be terrible. Well, it wouldn't be terrible. It'd still be great. But you know, I think you need to be with somebody who you can really have a good discussion with, and not just, you know. It requires discussion, and it requires other people to experience the same thing, or lots of different people to experience it, so that you can try and understand what's happening to you.
You know that most people in the world, they just want a steak and a brownie, right? And people, they love to tell you if they don't like it. Do they tell you when they don't like what you do?
Honestly, I accepted a long time ago that there would be a panorama of opinions about my work, and that it was unrealistic to expect more than about, I don't know, a handful of people to really like it. So, you know, for every person that likes your work, there's another person that hates it. But I think that for me, it's obviously very different for you, but I ignore all the commentary about my work. I'm just sort of like that. I just don't want to know what other people think, because the only person...
But how can you do that?
Because I realise it sort of suggests a certain weird ego, you know, that I'm... it's like some weird self-deception. But it's actually, if you're going to make an artwork, you have to love it. You have to think it's really interesting, and you have to be entertained by it. Otherwise, you can't expect anybody else to be entertained by it. But I guess it's very different when you're making food to some extent. I mean, you have to be really excited about it, but you have to know that other people are going to have that same level of engagement. Otherwise, they're just going to be like, yeah. You know. And that's not good. Nobody eats my artwork, you know, so they can't spit it out. But I think you know, saying that, I am quite oblivious, deliberately oblivious. Like I stopped reading reviews, I stopped reading interviews.
Why? Because
it wasn't helpful. Whether a good review or a bad review or anything in between, how is it helpful to me? I think the only important opinion about my work, I mean, it's not that I don't hear things that people say, but I think you've still got to make the work yourself, and you've got to make the decisions about it yourself. And it's not like you can put it in an exhibition and somebody says, I don't think that's very good, because there's always a context to them saying that, and they've no idea really what you're trying to achieve. And sometimes you don't really even know what you're trying to achieve as well. But generally, it just doesn't help me. It doesn't help me to make it better or to make progress or anything.
What helps you
then? Just to make work. Just to be in the studio alone and to make the work. And just to make work in response to the work that I've already made and to the thoughts that I've had. And because after a certain point, I just get bored of doing the same thing. So I stop and I do something different, and it evolves that way. But what you're doing, you know, is completely the opposite, in the sense that it really requires a response. It really requires somebody to literally consume. Yeah. And that consumption and that person's opinion is really, really, really important.
Yes.
And also there's this overlord French dudes dishing out Michelin stars, and that must just be a nightmare.
Are we going to have like a horror movie here?
But I also, coming here a lot and having lots of friends who really enjoy food and learning and going to different restaurants, or, you know, many of whom have, with Nicolai and other friends who have Michelin stars, you're sort of like, oh, it's like the Michelin star is made of lead. It just crushes you. Yeah. And I sort of, you know, there's no, I can't really think of an equivalent in my world. But also to be so beholden to some French people, it must be so difficult.
You touch upon a sore subject here for just about anybody in our industry, because the thing of being judged, that happens constantly. And the Michelin Guide is still relevant, of course, but they're by no means what fills your restaurant anymore. You know what that is? That's a public opinion, but not the word of mouth anymore. It's the social media.
TripAdvisor.
I hate to say it, but in the big bag of opinions, they are one of those big bubbles.
Yeah, I hate it was great apart from the ants.
Yeah, but I mean that is simply a part of it. You know, it's you live with these things, and then there's these mastodons like the Michelin Guide or the world's 50 best have become.
But you know, maybe like I'm saying, your opinion is the most important. It's like you say you've got to withhold things, an idea, because you feel that people aren't quite ready for it, but they're still going to get it. You still think it's a good idea, and it, you know, still. In a way, the same way that I think you've got to think that it's great and really interesting and in some way takes you to a different place, that experience of eating this thing and making this thing. So you do have to, your opinion is probably more important than anyone else's.
Yeah, I can see that when you put it like that. And
it's just that the response is far more important.
Hey, one question. Are you established?
I don't know. I guess so. I mean, I'm a certain age and I've been around for a certain number of years and have a certain presence, but I don't know. My work sort of fits in between certain things. Like I'm not really a sort of fancy museum artist that's in a lot of collections, but then in a way I am as well. You know, I've worked in the Statens Museum, etc., and MoMA and the Tate Gallery and blah-de-blah. But then also for other people, I'm a guy who just does funny drawings, who's sort of a graphic artist, which is why I do tattoos. And
But it's so good. It's amazing for you. You're free. You can do whatever you want.
I am, yeah. There's also, you know, there are shortcomings to being a person who's not quite, for some people who don't take me seriously as a fine artist, in the sense that they might take other artists who Nicolai shows seriously, like this, it's a serious artist, and that's not a serious artist, which is sort of odd use of language as well, because obviously I'm very serious. I'm not a dilettante. I just happen to be, the work happens to have a very comic tone, which I'm unapologetic about. In the sense that I could probably, you know, if I'd gone down a slightly different path, I could have made a lot more money and not done all of the things that I've done, like making labels for olive oil and making silly merchandise products. But I've learned so much from doing those things. I've learned from all the variety of nonsense that I've done over the years.
Do you have an agent?
Well,
merchandise things, is there somebody that's like saying,
yeah, I mean,
what are the, you know, if you sell per sold olive oil, you get a dime? Or
well, I get paid in olive oil, actually.
You're such a terrible businessman.
I know, it's so dreadful.
Just give me olive oil. We're two people.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have.
I need a liter a year.
It's nice to have the olive oil, but I guess, you know, the important relationship is the one that I have with Nicolai and a couple of other galleries, where you know, that's what pays the mortgage, and all the other stuff is just for fun, as far as I'm concerned. Although I do have a commercial agent, because increasingly there are more people who buy greetings cards and stuff like that. The other weird thing that I learned, because I know Banksy, And the weird thing that I learned about Banksy is that Banksy doesn't make any money from all his merchandise because, I guess because he doesn't really have to, but then everybody rips him off because they know that he won't sue them because he doesn't wish to be identified. But he said to me the other day, he said, oh, you've been really clever about doing your own merchandise. And I'm so nobody can rip you off, kind of thing, because you got there first. So your merchandise is the authentic merchandise, but he has no authentic merchandise because it's all ripped off.
Wow.
And I'd never thought about that before, and it certainly wasn't by design. But a lot of what I actually do is just drag and drop. What I call it's a drag and drop project, meaning that there's just a big there's a folder with loads of images of new drawings that I've made, and I just drag one of them and drop it into the email. A month later, it comes back as a T-shirt or a whatever.
I love it.
And that's my whole, you know, and I forget I've done it, and there's tote bags and whatever, hundreds of things. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't really know. And it's too late to make a decision. It just has to be a good thing, I suppose. The interesting thing, the show that I'm doing with Nicolai right now is a show with giant inflatable swans. In 2000, I made this very small edition made of plastic, and it was a little version of one of those swans without a head. And then the company that I work with in Australia, they made a pool floater, which was like an inflatable thing that kids mess around on the swimming pool with, a version of it based on the little edition I'd done. And then I made this project based on what they'd done. So there was this chain of decisions, one of which wasn't mine. It was these slightly crazy Australian women who I worked with, who said, yeah, it'd be great to make a pool floater. And then I was like, so the piece of merchandise informed this installation. And I really like that chain of events because it's sort of reclaiming something that I've been slightly concerned that I was just, I don't know, not making merchandise, which is sort of in some way making objects that aren't really important or maybe even just aren't very good. Whereas hopefully the other things that I made are good. But in a way, what was interesting about it is somebody else made the decision. And then I I responded to that decision. So I don't know. It's fun.
It's gonna be more like I have to find more my inner Shrigley in the.
Sometimes you need.
In the just letting things go.
Sometimes the story is just good, you know.
Does nothing ever make you angry, like really angry, where you just want to beat the shit out of someone?
Well, apart from Brexit, maybe I've made lots of mistakes, definitely.
How do you deal with? You can find things that look so much like yours.
I don't really reckon. People say, oh, so-and-so is ripping you off. And I'm like, it's as if I invented crappy drawing. I didn't. Everybody can do it.
Ah, come on. Everybody can do it, but they didn't. That's the reality. It's like when you go out the museum and people and your friends say, are you serious?
Well,
and people say, my daughter can do that, or I can do that. Yeah, but you didn't.
Well, for me, I'm a conceptual artist. I keep saying I'm a conceptual artist. And some people kind of go, are you sure? You know? And I say, well, I am a conceptual artist because for me, making drawings was just a means to an end. It was the actual craft was never very important. And it's sort of become something that's quite mannered and I'm really well known for. But the actual drawing itself was just make a drawing, write some text in order to make an idea real and make it economically, make an art statement. And that was the easiest way to make it, and I had a lot of things to say. So that's why I made these drawings. And then but if I'd had more time and resources, maybe I'd have made objects, photographs, films, whatever. So, yeah, I guess I've become, obviously there's something that I do, which is about words and pictures that I have an affinity for. But I certainly don't recognize it when people are ripping me off. I just think
But ripping off, maybe I didn't mean like that, just being very inspired.
I don't. Yeah, I feel I should be a warning, not an example. You know, not an inspiration. Don't go down this path. I don't know.
Yeah, but you've done so well. You make people happy, and you inspire even children, like my daughter. And we haven't pushed her at all to anything.
I feel like my target audience.
In fact, I told her, don't do what Shrigley does.
No, 8 to 12 is my target audience. You know, I feel adults.
Like the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.